Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of Perth and Kinross Licensing Committee. I'm Bailey Mike Williamson, the convener of the committee, and I'm also joined by my vice convener, Councillor Ian McPherson. I'm also joined by other members of the committee alongside Moyna McLaren, Deputy Clerk and Solicitor to the committee, Shona Meeke and Ken Engelberts, Licence Enforcement Officer, along with Jessica Gill, Clerk to the committee. Can I now ask the clerk to confirm any apologies received for today's meeting and confirm attendance of those in the chamber and online?
Thank you, convener. We have apologies from councillors Anderson and Robertson. We have a few members online. I'll ask them to confirm they're present, please. Councillor Allen.
Present.
Councillor Braun.
Yes, I'm here, Jess.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, present, Jess.
And Councillor Reid.
Yes, present.
All other members are present in the chambers, convener.
Thank you. Could I ask if there are any declarations of interest in respect to the business on the agenda today? Therefore, if there are no declarations of interest, could I ask if the minutes of meetings of the licensing committees held on the 19th of February, 12th of March and 27th of March can be agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Members, we now move on to paper 4, which is a grant of a short-term let licence. Members, this application is on page 13 onwards of your documentation pack. For this item of business, we are joined in the chamber by the applicant, Mr. Douglas Campbell and Miss Lorraine Carabine. This application has been brought to committee today following the receipt of 3 objections. I will now hand over to Moyna McLaren, who will introduce the report and advise on the procedures for the hearing.
Hello. The procedure for the hearing is that yourself as an objector will outline your objection, then the committee will ask questions of you, and then as the applicant you'll have an opportunity to respond, and then the committee can ask questions of yourselves, and then you can sum up at your objection, and you'll be able to sum up your response. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I please ask Joyce Hunter to outline her objection?
Thank you for hearing me today. I've never done anything like this before. I feel quite strongly about the usage of dwelling houses as short-term lets when there's such a chronic shortage of housing in the country. Okay, I'm more or less saying what I put in my letter with. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm just going to read this out. There's a chronic shortage of housing in Scotland, as all over the UK. People are struggling to find affordable homes to rent or buy. Councils are apparently crying out for more homes. For a variety of reasons, property has become eye-wateringly expensive, and for the past 10 or so years, fields are being filled in with lots of new homes. But meanwhile, property developers and second homeowners have been buying up homes generally in the older parts of towns and villages all over Scotland. I've seen the damage it's done in places in other parts of Scotland, stripping out communities, but never thought Blairgowrie would have this problem. If 42 George Street becomes a short-term let, it means that yet another dwelling house will have been removed from the housing stock in the old part of Blairgowrie. This must also push up house prices generally, exacerbating the problem of unaffordable rents and mortgages overall. There seems to have been no overall control either by councils or government on the numbers of short-term lets popping up all over the old part of Blairgowrie, until now possibly. I live in the middle of the old part of the town, and there will be approximately 12 short-term lets within a few hundred metres of my home if this one is given the go-ahead. There needs to be a quota or a much stricter decision-making process by the council. This house at 42 George Street could possibly be a long-term tenancy instead of a short-term let, giving somebody a home. The current owners bought it, and after doing some improvements have decided not to move into it, but put it on the market, and have so far been unable to sell it. None of these things are the fault or the responsibility of the surrounding neighbours. buying the property while living elsewhere was at their risk entirely. If they can't sell it, turn it back into being a home for someone else, or by letting it out long term, that's entirely their responsibility. It would be better if it was a long-term let than sitting empty. If this dwelling house is to become a short-term let and therefore a business, should it not require a change of use from domestic to commercial? Hotels and guest houses with signs outside would require such a procedure. Government and councils all over Scotland have been caught out by Airbnb and others and are only now catching up with regulations and licences, etc. They have so far failed in their duty to protect communities from this erosion. It's surely the duty of councils and government to stand up for their local people. My part of town is a strong neighbourhood. We watch out for one another and lend a hand when required. People stay around here a long time. As we all get older and die off, this old part of town is going to see an increase in short-term lets, and the permanent population will diminish if this situation is allowed to go on unfettered as now. There will be a reduced local community living here all year round, and it will be because the council hasn't stopped it. Since these short-term lets are set up and run as businesses, they don't pay council tax, so therefore do not contribute in that way to local authority funding. If they are a business, they should pay non-domestic rates based on rateable value. However, if they fail to earn the threshold, they don't pay, or they pay a lesser amount of those business rates. Premises may be eligible for one of the small business schemes and can receive up to 100% of non-domestic rate relief, therefore, again, not contributing to the local economy funding, local authority funding. That's surely not a very fair situation. This means that the council is allowing homes to be turned into businesses that do not contribute to the council funds. If they were still homes, tenants or owners would pay council tax and they would spend locally too. It's not just tourists that go out to eat, drink and shop. The only winners then will be second homeowners and absentee landlords. The locals and community will be the losers. I value my community greatly, but the council doesn't seem to see its worth. It seems that preferential treatment is given to second homeowners and property developers over the local people. Decisions should be weighted towards local community rather than speculative purchasers of property. In general, this is a section on parking and security, etc. In general, parking has become much more difficult for residents over the past few years. I haven't really got a problem with 42 George Street parking, as they've got a garage attached and signs up to stop parking in front of that on the street. But Oliver Gardens at the back of Mitchell Square and 42 George Street, which forms a right angle, they're private to us and we feel quite safe round there. There might be a fence or a hedge between the properties, but it's all quite open. We all share a communal gate from George Street. If this becomes a short-term let, this is a privacy issue and a security issue. The owners have written to me to say that customers would not use this gate, but the owners are not going to be around to monitor that. This will be an intrusion into our lives, having new neighbours every few days, all a bit stressful. Anonymity of short-term lets and empty hotels. Absentee landlords and property developers are being allowed to alter and empty our part of town. There's not enough attention being paid to what they're up to in this uncontrolled industry, and this is an industry. These are businesses, investment projects, not just someone letting out a spare room. They should not be confused with dedicated holiday accommodation such as chalets and pods and things like that. That's been a mistake made by various authorities, putting them all together in the same category. In the past, bed and breakfasts, as well as guest house and hotels, were proud to have a sign outside indicating their business. But now, due to everything being booked online, short-term lets operate under a cloak of anonymity, allowing the world, and sometimes just even their neighbours, to think that these are just ordinary dwelling houses. There are no signs outside. The only thing that gives them away is the keypad entry system. Gradually and quietly and without many constraints over the past 6 or 7 years, developers have bought up properties here in the old part of Blairgowrie, both houses and flats, to turn them into short-term lets. The sheer volume of these short-term lets available now must have had a detrimental effect on traditional hotels locally. The Royal Hotel, one of the main buildings in Blairgowrie's High Street, has never reopened after COVID. Perhaps this hotel may have come back to life if there was not the massive competition from local short-term lets within homes. This once busy, grand old building sits empty and abandoned, boarded up, and is a bit of a disgrace in our town, and it's also getting subject to vandalism. The categories of reasons for objecting to short-term lets also seems a bit narrow or limited. For example, noise, disturbance, security, privacy. But why is damage to a local community not considered? Surely the disturbance or possible disturbance to neighbours should be put above any pleas from licence applicants. The government and councils have made it too easy to manipulate all the loopholes in their short-term let legislation. Second homeowner developers and short-term let operators are in the most cases living elsewhere in the country and have no real interest in our town. 42 George Street is such an example. I don't expect they would be happy if several short-term lets rocked up next door to them. I would ask the council to please stand up for permanent residents in our part of Blairgowrie. Put yourselves in our shoes and please do not give permission for yet another short-term let to be licensed. Allow this house to be at home again. That's me finished.
Thank you, Joyce. Before I open up to questions, I'm just going to get some advice from the legal, Moyna McLaren, who's the legal officer, about the relevant policies that we have to consider. You made some points about the politicians, and some of the grounds for your objection were based on planning as well, which I don't think fall within this committee. But if I could ask Moyna just to outline some of the relevant policies for us before I open it up to questions.
And we were looking mainly at sort of things like public safety, public order, public nuisance, that sort of thing, the suitability of the location, the type of people frequenting the property. You know, these are the main areas you'd be considering.
Okay, thank you. Joyce, are you happy to take questions? Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Hunter? That don't seem to. Oh, Councillor Braun. Councillor Braun.
Yep, thanks, convener, and thank you for your deputation this afternoon. I wanted to go back to the question of parking. You mentioned that there was a private garage here. Now, the road itself is usually has cars parked on both sides, which means that you can only travel through those parked cars alternate. It's a single carriageway effectively when that's in place. Just wondering what your thoughts are if somebody's actually parked in the garage and there's no yellow lines around it from my recollection, would they actually be able to turn out and get out of the garage again because there's cars parked opposite and either side of them? Would that make it difficult to get in and out? And would it force them to park on the street is what I'm coming to say, I think.
Is that a question for me? Well, it's not my garage.
No, I appreciate it's not your garage, but you know the area. I've drove down it this morning myself. I'm just wondering if you were there, would you think with cars parked all around it, a car could easily get out in and out the garage, or would it really have to be on the street?
No, it can be on the street, but the people that lived there for 50 years, two previous to the present owners, managed to manoeuvre themselves in and out there, no problem. But that's not a problem. You can park on the street in front of the garage. I don't have a problem with their parking.
Okay, fine.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, Joyce Hunter? Rona?
Hello there. You mentioned about the shared access for the gate. How many share that access, do you know? And has there ever been any issues?
It was a private house until the previous owner sadly died, and we have had no issues at all. with that gate. The new owners are intending not to let anybody coming to stay in the house use that gate, but it's open all day. It's never locked. It's only locked from the inside with a bolt. It's never locked with a key. They could use it unless they intend to pen them inside their own garden with another gate. I don't know.
So what you're really saying is that that's open all the time, so anyone could probably go and access that at any time.
We're very vigilant and watch out for the gate and, you know, shut it as soon as it gets dark. Oh yes, anybody could walk in. We have had parcel deliveries coming in that way, but it's not a public thoroughfare.
You're also concerned over noise in the garden area, that it may well travel. You know, has there ever been at any time anyone that's been out in the garden area that's maybe had a barbecue or anything like that, that's maybe, you know?
I'm beginning to sound like a NIMBY here. We've had absolutely no trouble with the previous neighbours because it's never been a short-term let before, but I know what's happened from a previous short-term let, and you just don't know what's going to happen. You can't predict how people will behave.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you for your deputation, Joyce. You mentioned within your deputation that there are a number of other short-term lets around you. Can you just tell us what your experiences are with them, if you're having any issues or if by and large they're okay? Thank you.
Not having issues, I just feel that the old town of Blairgowrie is being gradually eroded. There are 6 flats at the foot of my street that are all short-term lets. There's one 2 doors down from me. There's one, well, within a few hundred yards, there are 12. And I think that's far too many. These houses could be rented as homes or sold as homes for people rather than for tourists.
Can I just come back on that very quickly? So
Okay,
my
Councillor
understanding,
Allen, just one point. We're here to judge this application, not the neighbours or any problems with the other short-term lets. So if you could just word your question for me differently.
yeah, if you'd allowed me to continue, you would have got that. Thank you. I'm just trying to understand, Joyce, if you therefore don't really have objections to short-term lets as such, given your previous answer, but more so it's the number of them.
I do have objections to short-term lets.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? If there are no further questions or nothing online, because now please ask invite Mr. Douglas and Mrs. Carabine to provide details of their application and respond to the objections.
Hello, thanks committee, thanks Joyce. Just to give you a bit of a small kind of backstory to how we came to this point. We bought the property in Blairgowrie with the intentions of moving into the area. Life and work got in the way, and that meant that we were unable to move there. So we put the property on the market in August last year. As Joyce has already mentioned, we've not been able to sell the property and it's just sitting there empty. We're not using it, so rather than having to pay for an empty property and sitting doing nothing, we took the decision that we would apply for a short-term let. So that's how we came to this point. It's not that we, bought the property in a distant town with the intentions of turning it into a short-term let. That's just the way life has dealt us this hand, and we can't afford to keep paying for it sitting there indefinitely. So, you know, we have to do something with it, and it's not selling. So that's just a brief backstory as to how we got here. In terms of, I think the only objections that we can talk to are really the ones about security, privacy, and noise and disturbance. And as Joyce has already mentioned, we have written out to the 3 objectors, just detailing our kind of plans and our wish or desire to help alleviate those concerns, because we understand, you know, we don't want the neighbours to feel insecure or threatened in any way, or have to put up with any noise or disturbance. So the shared pathway, so the rear garden of 42 George Street has a gate which leads out onto the shared pathway, and at the top of that pathway there's another gate with a lock on it that leads on to the main road. Our intention is to keep our own side gate locked so that guests can't get access to the shared path. And in fact, we don't even have a key to that shared gate anyway, so our guests would never have access to unlocking it. And we have also offered to build up the height of the fencing that's along our side garden where the locked gate will be, to help improve privacy, and we're quite willing to do that. The fence which borders our nearest neighbour, the longest part of the fence, again, you know, that's kind of well screened with shrubs and bushes, but if neighbours, you know, were willing to or wanted us to put up some additional screening there, then, you know, we want to work with everybody to make sure that this doesn't impact them in any way. In terms of noise and disturbance, we're limiting the lets to 2 adults. There won't be any children or any animals allowed. Guests will enter and exit from the front door of the property right onto the main street. The garage, they won't need to use that. You know, there's access onto the main street from the front door, so they don't need to use the garage or the side shared path, although we can use the garage for wheeling bins in and out, so that we're not using the shared path at all. We don't have any hot tubs, we don't have any barbecuing facilities or anything like that. And we are going to hand over management of the property to a local company called the Property Girls. So they'll be on site. We can give their number to the neighbours if there are any disturbances. They can come along and sort that out or get in touch with us. They'll be there on turning the property around, so they'll be available to the neighbours if there are any concerns. So I think in summary, you know, we're here because we have to be here, and we want to do everything that we can to limit any impact on the neighbours. I don't know if I've missed anything.
I don't think so, no. I think what you said is fine.
Okay, Councillor Allen, you have a question?
Yes, Convener. Yeah, I do have a question. Do you understand from your representation there that you have tried to sell the property?
Yes, went on the market in August last year.
Have you had any interest? Why has it not sold?
We've reduced the price. We don't know why it's not sold. As the agents say, it's just as the market as it stands at the moment.
Great, that's what I was after. Thank you.
Councillor Braun, you have 3 questions.
I have convened, but I'm happy to split them if you want to split with other people coming in. So just really follow. Thank you for your deputation, first of all, but I just want to follow on from Councillor Allen's question. Is the property still on the market?
Yes, it is.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. And could I, convene, if I could ask another one, then I'll have let Councillor Reid come in if you like, if that's okay. I'll take it that is electronic. Councillor Reid's pulled out anyway. He said
Just finish your questions off.
the other question is really obviously looking at short-term tenancy. Could I ask, given where its location is, why you haven't considered a short hold tenancy for a longer-term renting?
Okay, I've been a private landlord for many years, using short-term residential tenancies, and having done so for 30 years, I'm getting out of it. Basically, they changed the legislation over residential let, the rent caps, the various reasons. Tenants no longer look after your property, they abuse your property. If there is disturbance, if there is problems with tenancies, it's extremely difficult to evict a tenant now. So I think actually, if you get a bad tenant on a long term, it's far worse than on a short term.
Okay, thank
Personally.
you. Okay. My last question, Camille, really is just simply a general question. There's, I mean, obviously short-term lets aimed at tourists. What attraction do you think there is in Blairgowrie to bring people in? I mean, you're not in the centre of Blairgowrie at all. You're on the edge of it, and what's called Old Blairgowrie. You know, is there likely to be a demand for it?
I think we're one street off the high street, to be fair. We're pretty much in the centre of town. It's a lovely area. It's central for visiting a lot of beautiful places that we have around in Scotland. We have the Cateran Trail in Blairgowrie. There's a lot of local attraction for Blairgowrie.
There's a lot of walking, cycling, golf. So yeah, it's not, you know.
Okay.
We actually love the town.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I know. I live nearby. Thank you.
Councillor Frampton.
Thank you. You said that you've struggled to sell the property since it went on the market last year. Have you ever considered making an application to sell the property back to the council?
Sure, it was. I don't know. It's a private cottage. It's never been a council-owned property. I didn't know that was an option, to be fair.
I think, to be fair, that you know, because we actually bought the property because we love it and we wanted to live in it ourselves. Our circumstances have changed, and that's not practical for us at the moment. Personally, I don't think it would hurt for us. That's coming wrong. I think personally, I would still like to have the option to visit the property myself and to share time with my family there and to visit the town and spend time in the town, and perhaps should our circumstances change again in the future, because you never know what's going ahead of you, then, you know, it may be that we can use the property ourselves again in the future.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? No. There's no further questions to the applicant. Could I therefore ask Joyce Hunter to sum up, please?
I do feel that the considerations that are asked to list are a little short. I think that it shouldn't just be noise, disturbance, that kind of thing. I think that the community should be taken into consideration. I mean, if you don't have communities, you have a dead town, and that is going to happen. That is definitely going to happen. And it's the old part of the town which has got the nicest architecture. It may not be very thermally efficient, like all these new types of houses being built in the fields. But they're lovely little houses, nice architecture, and they're quaint, and that's where people want to live. When I moved there in 1995, I got a grant because the house had basically no facilities or anything, lead pipes. And I had to sign a thing to the council that if I got a grant, I would stay there for 5 years. And I've been there for nearly 30. And I think you have to have some sort of loyalty to a community like that. If you're going to stay around, going to buy a house, I think that communities, the important thing that's been missed off this list of considerations that the licensing is being asked to adjudicate on. I think community is the most important thing. When we had our first Airbnb 2 doors down, we didn't know it was an Airbnb until there was a disturbance. We were the gullible country bumpkins taken in by people who said, oh yeah, it's just going to be used by the family, and of course it wasn't. So you can understand why I feel the way I do, and I think that the community should be the most important thing, not just noise, disturbance, parking and that kind of thing. Like I say, parking isn't a problem because there's a space outside their garage. It's not a problem. But you just you can't predict how people are going to behave when they're visiting. They're there for 2 days and a week, they're gone. And it's an intrusion. It's an intrusion into our privacy. It's an intrusion, and it's very stressful. Can't tell you how stressful it's been for me to write all these letters and do a bit of investigation. And, you know, I've never done anything like this before, but I will do it again now if anything else pops up. Thank you very much for letting me speak. And thanks for your patience with the microphone.
Yeah, they've got for the grace of God, go I. Could I therefore invite Mr. Douglas Carbine and Mr. Douglas and Ms. Carbine to sum up, please?
It will be a short summary. Everything I've said in our deposition stands, and we understand the concerns of our neighbours, and we want to work with them to address those concerns. That's really it. Unless you have anything else to say.
I mean, I think it is really worth just mentioning again that, you know, we are taking as many steps as we possibly can to make sure that the disturbance to any neighbours is minimised. There will be 2 adult guests. There will be no pets. There will be, you know, no hot tub, no barbecue, no reason to use the shared path. We will increase the boundary if that's what they require us to do. Then we're quite happy to do that. We're quite happy to put a lock on the gate so that they can't access that shared path. And as I say, if we can work with them in any way to ensure that they are comfortable, then we will do that.
Okay, thank you. Do members wish to adjourn for further discussion?
Yes,
Okay, we're going to adjourn for 5 to 10 minutes just to for further discussion. Okay. Okay, therefore, my motion is to grant a license subject to the conditions outlined in the paper, but also with the addition of a curfew with no outside music or social gatherings after 10 o'clock. Share your contact details and your agent's contact details with your neighbours, and keeping the rear gate locked at all times. Okay, thank you. I do have a seconder.
Yeah, I'll second.
Are there any amendments to the motion?
Yes, convener, I have an amendment.
Okay, would you like to outline it, please?
Yep, thanks, convener. Yes, my amendment is to refuse the licence on this occasion. The property is a detached property, as we had described, but this is a very close community on this road. And I feel that overall, with various problems with parking that's ongoing, with the situation and the location of it, I feel it's not a suitable place to have a short-term let property. And therefore, I'm proposing that it should be refused on the grounds C C1, the location, and also C4, the possibility of undue public nuisance. The comings and goings of people on the pavement to get into the property, I think, will cause a nuisance to the community around it. And the community should be protected, I think, on this occasion. So I'm moving on C1 and C4, if I have a seconder.
Okay, do you have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Councillor Harvey. Therefore, could I please hand over to the clerk to carry out a roll call vote?
Thank you, convener. Members, we have a motion by Bailey Williamson, seconded by Councillor McPherson, to grant the application, and we have an amendment from Councillor Braun, seconded by Councillor Harvey, to refuse the application for the reasons outlined. When I call your name, please let me know if you're voting for the motion or the amendment. Councillor Allen.
Voting for the amendment.
Councillor Braun.
Amendment.
Bailey Brock.
Motion.
Councillor Carr.
Motion.
Councillor Chan.
Amendment.
Councillor Frampton.
Motion.
Councillor Harvey.
Amendments.
Councillor McPherson.
Motion.
Councillor Reid.
Amendment.
Councillor Stewart.
Motion.
Bailey Williamson.
Motion.
Thank you. I have 6 votes for the motion and 5 for the amendment, and therefore the motion will carry.
Okay, thank you. Your licence has been granted. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your attendance. That concludes today's business. Thank you.